Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for SQUPCAST, SquaredUp's brand new podcast. Really pleased to have a few people online live as well. Today, I've got a couple of my colleagues with me, Vincent and Samir. Over the course of this episode, I'll talk a little bit about what the rest of the series is going to cover as far as we've planned, and we're going to dive into some new and cool stuff that SquaredUp's been adding recently. But let's start with some intros. So, Vincent, why don't you tell everyone who you are and why you're here?
Thanks, Adam. Hello. Hi, Samir. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I am here because I'm a member of the product management team. So it's actually a few of us. It's only me today representing the PM group. So we'll probably, I guess, take turns as PMs over the next few podcasts. But today you've got me. I'm looking forward to talk to you about we'll talk about what we've released recently, what's about to be released, what's new, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Vince. Samir.
Yes, sir. Hi, everybody. This is Samir. I'm the developer advocate at SquaredUp. So my role primarily revolves around evangelizing the product mainly. That includes going to the conferences, organizing conferences, finding any cool use cases from the customers or from our community forums or support tickets, try to make dashboards out of it, and then help the marketing team basically amplify that use case. That's pretty much my role here.
Nice. Thank you very much for that, Samir. Over the rest of the series, we'll be joined by a few other people from SquaredUp who will talk about certain topics. Just before we dive in, it's probably worth just quickly sharing this. If you head to squareup.com/events/SQUPCAST, we'll probably shorten that link at some point soon. There's a nice overview of the topics we've planned out so far. So everything from a few customer use cases that are proving really popular. We're going to dig into some of the aspects around security, some of our sort of more complex features like our on-prem relay agent. So we've got a bunch of cool topics lined up. If any of them appeal to you, you can just register for those individual sessions. We're going to start today by handing over to Vincent to just walk us through a few of the cool new features that we've added recently. There's a lot going on. We'll be doing this every sort of 2 weeks for the rest of the series. So we'll have quite short sections where people can drop in just to talk about the things they've been working on. But we'll start today's one with a little bit more depth. We'll go a little bit further into the past just to cover some of the things we've done in the last couple of months instead, because there's lots in there. So Vincent, I think we were going to start by talking about the relay agent and what we've been doing with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can pick that. I mean, we're probably going to cherry pick today because, as you said, there's probably quite a lot more than we'll cover, I guess, or we'll have time to cover. There's probably a changelog as well. It might be useful to share a link as well if people want the full list of it. But yeah, one of the first items we wanted to talk about is the relay agent for Docker. What does that actually mean? So the relay agent is what we use to connect to a data that's typically on-prem. So if it's behind a firewall, our platform is a SaaS-based platform. So we need a way to sort of stream the data, the metrics over to the platform. So we've always had a relay agent that you can set up on a Windows machine typically. And recently we've released one for Docker, which is pretty cool. I think Docker is typical if you're in a container infrastructure, I guess, and your data might be on there. Maybe it could be like, I think what a customer had Jenkins on-prem, for instance. We've heard of Jira on-premise as well. Prometheus would be probably another valid use case where you'd want to deploy that agent easily with Docker. That tends to be, from what we've seen, the preferred way of quickly deploying an agent on a Linux-based machine, and typically in a Docker container. So that's probably the first thing we wanted to talk about. I think, Adam, you've actually made use of that recently.
Oh yeah. Well, as I'm lucky enough to have my own enterprise license for SquaredUp, noting the relay agent is an enterprise feature. I actually run it on my Synology NAS at home. So as a massive nerd, I obviously have a VMware server in my house for no real reason. I collect a bunch of data from my home power monitoring kit. So having a relay agent on-prem is useful. And previously that involved running a Windows server in VMware just to run this tiny little service. Whereas now I can just run it with almost no resource burden in Docker on my Plex server, basically, which is pretty awesome.
Sounds cool.
The real use case, obviously, is being able to put it into Azure container registries, or run it in AWS, or wherever you need to get that data from, behind a network boundary, not necessarily just in an old-fashioned data center or your house.
Yeah, we've also, I think, depending on the data source you're adding. So, because we've got a bunch of data sources that are specifically on-prem. You talked about VMware, I think, Adam. We've got, web API that might be on-prem. I talked about Jira. I think that there are a bunch of those, and sort of depending on where the data is based. When you sort of start with SquaredUp and you want to connect to Jira and it's on-prem, we'll walk you through the sort of the setup, the choice you have. So you have a choice: is it Windows, is it Docker? And then we sort of try and make it as easy as possible to sort of get going with it and get going with Docker. And Docker was great because I'm not that techy myself, and I was able to deploy a Docker image myself of that container. So that's how easy it's supposed to be. And
yeah, nice. Yeah. There is actually one other thing that just came to mind around using the relay. We have a few customers who use Azure SQL instances, and by default, they are very heavily firewalled. You have to provision specific rules to access them. And sometimes it's not about controlling sort of where we can connect to data from. It's about controlling the IP address connecting to your cloud services. So some big orgs may have Salesforce, limited to their Office IP address, or in this case, Azure SQL limited to their Office IP address. The agent can be useful for a bunch of other reasons too.
I was just thinking, so because relay agents kind of sounds like a SCOM agent because of my SCOM background. I've never done this. I've never had to, but is there a way to, or have you done like a mass installation of the relay agents?
What, sorry?
Is it of the relay agent, like if I've got a bunch of Azure virtual machines, and can I make like an extension to the VM image while I deploy it? And
I mean, that sounds like the perfect experiment for a developer advocate, if you ask me. So how about you come back on in a few weeks' time and tell us how you did it?
Yeah, that's actually, yes, that's a good question. Maybe I should.
It's also worth mentioning that the relay agent, you can install it once in your environment, and it can connect to all of your data source. So you could have one per data source. You could have one in Europe, one in Australia for load balancing. Like it's you install it wherever your data is, really, and then you can do a lot of things with it. You could have one per big hypervisor if you wanted to. If there was a lot of data going through it and you wanted to start load balancing the data, so it's got some flexibility, I guess, in how it's being deployed.
Well, let's not to preempt the session in a few weeks' time that Matthew Long's coming on to talk about the relay agent. Let's move on to something else new and cool.
Okay.
What's up next?
I think we wanted to just a quick call out to the fact that we now support the Europe region in the SaaS product. So again, we are a SaaS platform, so you sort of sign up to the product, and now you get to choose your region, whether it's US or Europe. So that's pretty cool. We've seen quite a decent number of signups on Europe specifically. So typically, if you're based in Europe, you probably want to choose Europe for the sort of data location. So that's pretty cool. I guess the next one I was gonna pick up on was around the sort of we've last year when we introduced a number of features around monitoring and notifications. Basically, it's the ability to say, well, I've got a metric that matters to me. I need to be able to keep a pulse on it. So I want to put some thresholds. So I get, if it tells me when it goes red, amber, green, so I get notified. And so that's pretty cool. But we had some use case recently where the customer wanted that an image of the dashboard to be sent on a Slack channel every Monday morning at 9:00, right? So we've made that possible through our API. And it's pretty cool. It's a really cool use case. Typically, you're not going to sort of stand and stare at the dashboard to wait for something to go wrong. That's where our monitoring feature comes into play. But equally, you don't want to. No one's going to go 5 minutes before a meeting to look at a dashboard we're basically bringing the dashboard to you in doing so. So in that specific use case, I think it was a bunch of different DevOps teams, and they're basically getting that same dashboard that shows all the DevOps pipeline status on Monday morning delivered to their Slack channel. So when it comes to meeting, it's like, all right, okay, we are all looking at the same image of the dashboard and the state of our pipelines. And as I said, it's enabled with the API, and the API has recently the documentation has recently gone public as well. So it's for enterprise customers, that's seems to be getting traction as well. And you can do a lot with it. I think Adam or Sammy, you probably tell me what you've done with it, because it's the options are endless, really.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff in there for sure. I'll share a link. It's not on the last slide for this particular session, but if you're catching this up on YouTube, or you can find us on support.squaredup.com, we'll have that information there as well.
Yeah, this one's particularly interesting because many conferences that I've gone to have asked for this. So I'm definitely very happy that this is coming, or has come rather.
Which one is that, Sammy? Is that the image
The API
export or the API
documentation? Yeah,
that seems to be the aspiration for most users. We've seen you
Yeah.
sort of start and create your dashboards manually, your tags, your data source, but then you get to a point where, right, I need to automate things because I don't know, typically a microservice gets stood up or down every day, multiple of them. So you need to automate that. Have you done that yourself? Have you in any of your use cases? I guess Adam probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I was just going to say on the docs front, we've taken quite a nice approach to that. It's not just sort of static documentation. You can download the API spec and import it straight into Postman. So if you're exploring through a tool like Postman, you can get started really easily. Everything's kind of in there, ready to go. Internally, we here at SquaredUp, we use the API for all sorts of things. I'm actually going to share a little sort of customer story in a little while, just around dashboard sharing, but it actually involved using the API to solve it. And internally as well, every Monday morning we deliver some of our commercial dashboards straight into Slack channels to understand sort of customer usage or new people signing up, that kind of stuff. So the API is incredibly useful for all sorts of stuff. We are making the notifications part of it, being able to trigger a notification. That's available in our Pro tier. You don't need an enterprise license for that. But yeah, everything else is otherwise enterprise.
And I think it's just worth mentioning that it's not only for Slack, though. Right? So we do for Slack, for Teams, even for a custom webhook that we can connect to. So it's definitely very customizable, very useful.
Yeah, we've basically, I think in the last 12 months, we built sort of like an engine to take an image of a dashboard. So that's part number one. And you can do that in the product today. You can go export an image, copy and put it somewhere in a PowerPoint presentation, an email, whatever, an Excel spreadsheet. But because we have that, and then the ability to send things, typically to, as you say, Slack, Teams, ServiceNow, custom webhook, and email. So we've got that, the palette then. And then we've got what we call notification rules. So basically the collection of those three lets you do, if something goes red, send it to Slack. But if that thing goes right, send me an email first. So you've got that flexibility. And now with the API, as you said, you can, you can decide what you want to get, when you want to get it, and who you want to get it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just around sort of like scheduled triggers. We talked about 9 a.m. on a Monday, do this, but it could be the last step in a build pipeline that pushes a dashboard out. It could be when machines are going to be, resources are going to be cleared up in your cloud provider, trigger a webhook in effect. It's pretty cool.
It's also worth mentioning when you receive a notification, say if a metric goes right, for instance, on a dashboard. So you get a notification. It can come to Slack, for instance. It'll tell you, all right, the build duration for this pipeline has exceeded. It's about 10 seconds. It should be 5, or it's about 10 minutes. It should be 5 minutes. So you get that, but you also get a picture, a preview of actually that metric. So it could be a line graph that's gone through the roof. It could be a value or something that's just meaningful. So those notifications you receive are very useful just on their own. I guess. Of course, you can then drill down to the product, I guess, and then find out a bit more. But
yeah, nice. I think the other things we were going to talk about are looked after typically by Dave in our product management team, who's off enjoying a lovely holiday somewhere, seeing as it's Easter here in the UK at the moment. I've got a little bit of show and tell prepared on his behalf. I'm very keen on people having dashboards that are useful to them. And for me, what makes a dashboard useful most of the time is that it's easy to understand what you're looking at. You don't have to guess. You don't have to go and ask somebody or read a textbook to figure it out. And sometimes it's as simple as having the right color on data. Sometimes it's just about having the right label in the right place. Having good status labels, being able to decorate the information with some little bits of extra text. So we've been adding lots of cool features in this area. I mean, you'd hope for a visualization product. We have some good focus on our visualizations. Let me just share a screen quickly. So this is from my own use of SquaredUp. This is my home energy monitoring dashboard. And recently, when this feature came in, I thought what I really want to see on this is the difference between whether my energy is coming from my solar panels or whether it's coming from the grid. I use a supplier here in the UK called Octopus Energy, and their brand color is bright pink. So naturally, I went for the brightest pink I could find the color for. But being able to show things like this, I think, just makes this so much easier to read, especially when the default palette would otherwise just be a bunch of sort of quite similar blues. At the moment, we haven't added any UI for this yet. Our support team will happily help you put this together, but the option is there in the tiles JSON editor, and it's simply a case of just adding this little palette section into the tiles configuration. So I've been able to say, if the label for the data is solar, I want you to use this color. If it's load, I want you to use this color instead. And you can then apply that consistent palette across all of your graphs as well. So the color stuff, I think, is great. Anywhere where you're trying to reflect sort of positive versus negative or similar groupings or very distinct groupings, especially if it's something quite clear, like we all associate yellow with the sun, right? So I think that's pretty easy to sort of call out. We recently also added the ability to show the legends more clearly on charts and to choose where they are. So left, right, top or bottom, which again, you can sort of hover over and everything sort of highlights nicely. And again, all sticks to your colors. That I really like this feature. I think it just adds so much sort of pop into a dashboard when you can sort of instantly make the judgment around what you're looking at, which I think is just such a nice feature.
I think it's so important. I mean, we often hear from our customers that come to us and say, "Oh, I've got this great dashboard. Everything has got a color for a reason because I want my audience to be able to very quickly associate that this is about the solar panel, this is about that, or this is this server, this is that service." And so, as much as it sounds trivial, it's actually very important. I think for us in PM, we have to do, design a UX, the UI of things. And we talk a lot about cognitive load. So the more precise, the more to the point, the more simple what you're presenting is, the better it is to use. And I think that's a prime example of this.
Yeah. Would this be able to, could this work on like a dashboard level, not on a tile level?
Well, that would certainly be the dream. I think that is in the backlog. Somewhere to be able to set that at dashboard level, because then absolutely, I've had to copy and paste that little block of JSON a few times on my dashboard to get the effect I want. But yeah, I'm sure we'll make that nice and sweet. We'll put that on Dave's shoulders while seeing as he's not here to defend himself. The other thing, go for it. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's the other thing that the few tools are doing out there. That's once you've assigned a color to an object or a label, whatever, to your dashboard, then wherever that object pops up, it will be that color. So it's very easy to identify wherever in the tile that object is and correlate things basically. So.
Yeah, I mean, the case I've used there is sort of being able to identify sort of what the data is on a tile. But like you say, Samir, if you've got a bunch of different tiles on a dashboard, being able to quickly scan across them or looking for those consistent devices, whatever that kind of stuff is. Yeah, it's good. So using it to infer, positives and negatives, spend against credits, that kind of stuff is one case. But yeah, also just that consistent tagging across graphs. The other thing that's sort of rolling out at the moment is a feature to let you add some extra some shaping to your data. So if you're not familiar with that term in the SquaredUp context, one of the things our plugins do when we call back data from, let's say, Azure, and it's cost data, we understand what currency it is. So when you look at it on a tile, it'll have the right symbol. It'll be a number. It'll have 2 decimal places. It won't be some just big, ugly string that you can't read or can't aggregate. And our dashboard designer is then able to do things like aggregation, averages, totals, that kind of thing, when it's the right kind of number. We'll also do clever things like if it's bytes and it's more than 1 million, we'll show it as megabytes, that kind of stuff. But that doesn't work without that metadata being provided by our plugins. And as we're adding more and more plugins that provide configurable data streams. So the Web API plugin is a great example. You can use that to connect to anything. The PowerShell plugin does the same. If you're using, say, the KQL data streams in the Azure plugin, the SOQL data stream in Salesforce, you need a way to be able to say, this is a number, this is a date, this is a string value, that kind of thing. And that's been kind of hidden and quite difficult to do from a user's point of view. But we are sort of rolling out this functionality that we're just simply calling columns. So in the standard tile editor, it's going to let me manipulate the data that's been returned. So in this case, all my home energy data comes out of AWS time stream. So it's just a query that gets run, a SQL-like sort of query. SquaredUp doesn't naturally know that something's a number or something's a string or something's a date. We guess very well a lot of the time. But this functionality basically lets you control that. So if I want to specifically say, this is a number and I want it to have 2 decimal places, I can come in here and I can control that number. I can override the fact and I could say, well, actually, this is petabytes and I want it with 10 decimal places, that kind of stuff. So being able to get any data and have the tile automatically sort of shape it up has always been the dream. In cases where it's more difficult for the app to do it itself, we're now giving you that full control to override it all. And beyond that, we'll be able to give you the ability to do things like combine multiple columns, make a new column from 2 string values, or, use some expressions to multiply things together. Maybe you want to convert currencies in a simple way, that kind of stuff. So the inline column editor is really great for that. Where it's coming to next is into SQL Analytics. So even if I've done all my nice shaping in my base data sets here, I maybe still need to do some extra shaping on the output from my SQL query. And that's where that's coming up pretty soon. And it does just make such a difference being able to, instantly connect to anything you want. And it just works in a really sort of easy way. So just generally making it simpler to understand what data is, right? Just having that unit label appear over here at the side is handy when you're hovering over, having the number decorated with the right unit, being able to see the legends nice and easy, being able to use colors. These things are all fairly sort of simple sounding, but they make such a big difference to the user experience.
Just because I do remember when I came back, so to say, and when I was starting newly with the product again, Adam, you may remember I was bothering you a lot with some things like, hey, this is I want it to be a currency, or I want it to be a number, but it's taking it as a string. How do I make it do that? And then every time we'd go to the dashboard JSON and then add some metadata there, and I don't know what the type is exactly, and things like that. So it has definitely made my life, and I'm sure by extension Adam's life also very simpler, because I don't have to bother him for every little thing now. So definitely loving that.
Yeah, it's a really, really powerful feature for sure.
Yeah.
I think the other person who's lucky enough to be off on holiday this week is Bruce from our product team. Bruce looks after Dashboard Server, our on-prem product, but also all of our plugins, our integrations into SquaredUp Cloud. Vince, do you want to jump in with any little hints about what Bruce's team has been up to recently, just around sort of plugin improvements?
Yeah, I mean, plugins, data sources I guess they are core to what you do on a dashboard. You have to connect to the data. You have to be able to get the metric you want. So Bruce and his team are constantly, relentlessly, I should say, working to, I guess their focus has been working to improve the existing data source we have, because we've already got quite a sizable number of them. I can't remember what the official count is, Adam, but depending on how you count it, could it be between 70 or 100? I'm not sure.
Infinite with the web API
as well. Yeah, so it's all sorts, and I guess their focus from what we've seen has been on improving the main ones, the ones that are very popular, typically Azure, AWS, Azure DevOps, just being able to connect to more of their services, or being able to show the data in a way that's more meaningful. So I think they've worked a lot on customer feedback as well. Those are very important typically to us. Whilst you can do anything with the web API, if we find that a lot of customers need to connect to Azure and see the Azure backup state, for instance, we will give you an out-of-the-box Azure backup metric, right? This is just one example amongst many, but again, as I say, I think the best thing to keep a pulse on is that product log that we have. We'll probably share the link, because that's where everything gets literally logged, so you can see what's being improved. But yeah, there are just too many improvements on the plugin side of things to talk about everything. But it's
You're too kind to Bruce, seeing as he's not here. But I think we'll come back just towards the end, just with a few maybe little sneak peeks for the future. I was just going to share just a quick example of people being able to use a lot of the features that we've been delivering recently for ways we hadn't quite thought about yet. I'm going to share what looks actually like quite a boring dashboard. It's just a bunch of boxes. Nothing overly exciting here. There's some things that have got health state. There's maybe something interesting there, that there's a little padlock. This is around a customer story. They're a long-term customer who've been using Dashboard Server, our on-prem product, for a while. And in sharing in Dashboard Server, we have a configurable navigation bar. We have the ability for an admin, a SquaredUp admin, to sort of define some shared dashboards that are always available to anyone using their instance of SquaredUp. We haven't taken that approach yet with SquaredUp Cloud, but because we have customers sort of moving from one product to the other, people always come armed with all these great things that we've spent 12 years doing in Dashboard Server and want them in cloud. So this is just a really simple example using our API, actually. So what this dashboard does, in effect, is it gives you one place to go to see all the dashboards that are shared in your organization. Instead of having, in this case, 20 different URLs bookmarked in your browser, we can have one bookmarked in your browser. And that's ultimately what they wanted to do. They just wanted that sort of shared dashboard directory. So in the background, this just uses our web API plugin. We call our own API, and we get all of the dashboards that are shared in our tenant. And then using our SQL Analytics feature, we can just simply shape that data into something that works nicely in blocks. So these are all clickable. If I click one, a new tab's going to open, and I'm going to get the dashboard that I just went to. This is our demo lab, by the way, so there's no concern around sort of what's being shown here. And that's a really bad example, seeing as it's broken. But let me just get out of full screen mode quickly. All of these dashboards are effectively just a browser for other dashboards in the organization. We can definitely share sort of how this is built. Like I said, it does use our API, so it's an enterprise feature. But this is something that we hadn't thought of sort of prioritizing for a formal feature yet. I know when Vincent was asked, he probably said, "Oh, I'm too busy. This is not happening. Get out of here." That kind of stuff. But you can build pretty much anything with the right sort of inspiration. Customer wanted a dashboard browser, and just using a couple of features within SquaredUp.
For cross-organization dashboards also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the web API call just uses an API key. So per tenant, you just need to create an API key. You can have multiple calls being made to multiple tenants' lists of shared dashboards. And SQL could definitely then just merge all that together.
Yeah, what would be really, really cool, that's probably a feature improvement that's slightly different from it, but related, is, how often do you get like, "Oh, I've shared a link with you the other day. Oh, but I've shared the link." So you get links being shared to you from a tool, that could be SquaredUp, it could be another tool. I don't know what it is. It's somewhere in Slack. Just having a list of dashboard that have been shared with me that I can sort of, as you've showed us that I'm here, just, yeah, there it is. Click on it. It's just, it's a time saver for sure.
Yeah, we in the SQL here, it's checking whether, for example, the dashboard is shared for anonymous access. If it's shared, then it requires authentication. That's where the little padlock is appended. This gray one here is because someone's disabled that sharing link. So they haven't deleted it. They haven't unshared the dashboard, but they've paused sharing on this dashboard. And again, you could just filter those out using SQL. Maybe you only ever want to show certain ones. And in fact, in the sample that we gave to the customer, we left some simple SQL sort of where clauses on the end, so you could filter out, your board reports, for example, or particularly sensitive workspaces. It's pretty easy to sort of make anything you want. Any keen beans pausing it and copying this URL, you're very welcome to, because like I said, it's just a shared dashboard in our demo environment. But yeah, we'll be able to share out some information around sort of how to do this if it's of interest.
It's interesting to see, like, probably going off tangent for a few seconds, but why is it green, right? Could it be red, amber? Why is it? Is it gray? And that's this is our monitoring feature in action here, right? It's where you've got metrics on those dashboards which have got a state which is rolling up to the dashboard, and that's why everything looks green. That's amazing. And I'm not sure how you do that. But if a metric on the the exec dashboard, say some metric had gone a bit out of bound, then it probably would be showing red, I guess. Is that right? Or
well, in this simple example, sorry to admit that I took the easy way out, and they're either green or gray based on open access status. But
fair enough. You could, yeah.
With we're already using SQL Analytics, right? It's already designed for merging together data, and if these dashboards have a health state, there is a data stream for that. The SquaredUp health data stream will give you the health state of a dashboard. So yeah, there is absolutely no reason why this couldn't be showing real red, amber, greens based on monitors on those dashboards.
Cool.
Another one for our developer advocate, I think.
I was just thinking whether this would work well with the map as well.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah, in a map, like if you've got multi-organization dashboards, and you could, roll them all together in like a one exec dashboard, the Richard Benville dashboard, let's say. So he gets all the info on all the people and all the things that are happening. So that might be a cool use case.
There's definitely a case with our API for being able to pull objects, so pull health states from one tenant into a dashboard on another, and then monitor those. So yeah, you could have one sort of master tenant monitoring a few others, individual segregation. But I mean, workspaces are already pretty good for that, right? They're already good to have one organization with many workspaces. But if you did want to get super complex rather, then yeah, you could absolutely use our API to pull that information into a dashboard. I keep saying I left this tab open just to sort of highlight actually that I have already shared this information. Community Answers is a resource we've run for probably a decade now. Thousands of members contributing all sorts of great questions, sharing information. It's obviously very heavy on our dashboard server and SCOM topics, just because of the age of the platform. But we recently added a dedicated section for SquaredUp Cloud, and to sort of support that and the sharing of sort of ideas and knowledge and step-by-step guides for various things, we added this gist section. So very much sort of ripping off GitHub gists, just simple, easy way to sort of share some piece of information. So I actually wrote this up just this morning ahead of this recording. And it is just a really quick walkthrough of how to put together exactly the dashboard that I want, that the customer wanted in this case. And there's a few other great examples already in our gist section. So Richard wrote up a few things around connecting to, using GCP, using Google Auth, with the Web API plugin. There's some stuff in here about using some plugins have custom timeframe support. But if there's anything cool that you discover while you're playing around with SquaredUp, there's somewhere to sort of write up those little tips and tricks now. It's not a Q&A style section like all the others. This is more just sort of write-ups with commentary. So don't expect to be sort of seeing answers posted in here. If you have questions, check out the SquaredUp Cloud section. But I definitely encourage anyone who's sort of coming up with really cool stuff in SquaredUp using the Web API plugin or a PowerShell plugin for all sorts of cool things definitely
Yeah,
get those
and this
things
is
shared.
public, so anybody can write it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so no API keys in your code samples, but definitely share those sort of step-by-step guides. There's going to be some good stuff in there for sure. Let's we'll aim to sort of wrap up in a few minutes. Vince, maybe do you want to give a few little sneaky hints at future things that we might be hearing about?
Yeah, I can do. I'll pick up 2 or 3 just top of my head because we've got quite a few coming up. But as I said earlier, data sources, making sure you can connect to your data in the best possible way is top of mind. What we are focusing on as well is giving you sort of out of the box dashboards or sample dashboards, essentially, just making sure that when you connect to your pipeline or CI/CD to Jenkins or ADO, or when you connect to Azure or AWS, whatever the tool might be, that you get some good out-of-the-box dashboards just to get you started. We already have plenty of them. Well, just a matter of making them better and giving you more or less, depending on the case, but the more relevant ones, essentially. So that's the focus of ours. So you should see more of that coming up. For my part, I guess more specifically, we are getting a ton of feedback on monitoring and notifications. We talked about it earlier, so I probably won't go through all the details, but basically giving you more control over what you get notified on, essentially when you do and who gets notified upon a problem in your environment as monitored in SquaredUp. So a lot in this area, things like monitor history, scheduling notifications are also part of that. So there's quite a lot to do. So I think in the next few months, we want to do more improvements in this area. And the third one I'll call out is basically what are we doing on dashboards? We are a dashboarding product, and when you think about it, when you open up SquaredUp, you want to build a dashboard. So again, plenty of improvements in there. One I want to call out specifically, and I'm sure Dave will get to talk more about it in the coming weeks on SQUPCAST, but it's about dashboard variables, dashboard perspectives, the ability to sort of build one dashboard and being able to look at that dashboard in different ways. That because when we connect to a data source, say AWS, Azure, whatever the case might be, we index all the objects we find. So we have a list of your servers in AWS. We have a list of your lambdas in AWS, servers in Azure, whatever the case might be. So we have all of that knowledge, and using that knowledge, we can say, well, I want to build a dashboard and filter it on all the servers in the EU region and show me the CPUs, the memory, whatever the case might be, or a lambda in a specific region, or a bunch of. Anyway, the opportunities will be plentiful. That's been a sort of a popular request for users and customers so far. So I think that'll make a big difference to how you use the product and how you explore the product. I guess that's what we ultimately try and do. Right, you've got a lot of data everywhere. Build a dashboard. The more dashboards you build, the more we can connect the dots, and the more you can explore. So when there is a problem, you log into SquaredUp and you can start exploring and find a root cause maybe. So that's the plan.
I'd be so tempted to share a sneak preview of the upcoming map visualization, the thing that's going to let you really use SquaredUp like an exploratory tool, because it's just brilliant. But I think we'd get a slap on the wrist from the boss if we went this early on. So maybe in a couple of weeks' time, there'll be some nice new map visualization to share. That exactly like you say, the ability to sort of walk around your dashboards, to be able to move from one to the other based on links that you maybe don't even that you're not aware of yourself. Some other team is dashboarding the same resources as you for a totally different reason. Being able to sort of explore all of that is really awesome. Okay. Well, we're coming up for sort of 45 minutes, which we've rambled on for a bit longer than I expected we would. So I'm glad to see a few people stuck around for the duration. We'll also be putting this up on YouTube. I'll just bring up, I do have a few sort of links ready to show that we'll end each session with. So Community Answers has had a couple of shout outs. So community.squaredup.com. Vince, you mentioned the change log and the plugins roadmap. Head over to feedback.squaredup.com for that. If you want to appear on a future episode of SQUPCAST, if you've got any great ideas, if there's any topics that you'd like us to really dig into for sort of 45 minutes or more in this kind of format, then just get in touch with us, SQUPCAST@SquaredUp.com, and we might be able to get some user-driven topics onto the agenda in the coming weeks. But yeah, thank you very much for stopping in today, Samir and Vince. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We'll catch you in a couple of weeks. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.